Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Inverted Orthodoxy podcast. My name is Blake. I'm here with Doug and Kyle, and this is episode 400. Do we reserve that for
finger guns for a big episode?
And everything? We're so glad that you guys are with us. We enjoy it each and every week doing this. You guys send in your questions, and we take you on twists and turns throughout your faith journey and try and broaden just all our thinking and all our understanding of who God is. And we love doing it. But 400 episodes.
Yeah.
We talked about it a little bit last week on the podcast, me just saying, like, I was trying to remember what podcast I started on and then just how many you guys have done. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with someone recently, and I can't remember who it was, but I was telling them that we do a podcast. And they're like, oh, how many episodes have you done? And I said, next week will be our 400th. And they were like, what?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I've been doing this for a while.
Yep. An idea we never knew would take off. It's still here and can keep going.
You knew it would take off.
I did.
It was Kyle's idea. Kyle gets all the credit. In the beginning, Kyle would have got all the blame.
Totally.
No, but this is all your brainchild. This all started because you had this idea at a staff meeting one day that you were like, what if we just threw a mic on a table at the end of staff meeting and answered people's questions?
Yep. I will fully admit it's just because I love the medium of podcasting. I'm like, I want to do one. That's a big motivation. But I think in our context, to make space for people to have differences of opinion, to have the freedom to explore the twists and turns, as we phrase it, of faith, to see their pastors doing it was going to give them permission to do it. And I think at the time, we had a whole bunch of different, even just denominational backgrounds on staff.
Yeah.
And so we didn't even agree on everything. So people, I think, assume that what the pastors all say, they've got a tight-knit thing, and we just got to match up to it. And that wasn't even reflected in our staff. And so I wanted to dispel that idea. Like, no, there's a width of experience. There's a width of understanding of who God is and exploring that, and let's give people that space. So it's cool that's worked out. It easily could have flopped. Astounded many weeks that people bother to listen to us, and every iteration of the us that has been over the, 8 years now, just under 8 years, to be able to make that happen. And thankful that people keep listening and sharing it, and that's really cool.
Well, for the first 100 or so episodes at least,
Yep.
we had a very small audience.
Yep.
A very small but very loyal audience.
Yep.
That, like, there were weeks that it'd be like 3 or 4 people listened.
Yep.
But those people listened every time we did one. And that's what kept it going, was there's not a lot of people listening,
Yep.
but those who listen say that it's incredibly valuable.
Yep. And we even would make questions up. I remember you and I going to a couple lunch meetings and making up some questions to keep the thing going, so we wouldn't have like a 3-week break before we got the next question in.
Yeah.
So we keep posting an episode. By just to compare, right now we're sitting on at least 30 questions.
Yeah.
that
But
we're
we
looking
also
at.
would sometimes not, like, we'd go weeks without an episode.
Yeah. And then we
So it's been
realized
more
we
than
need
8
to,
years, because in the early days, we did not do an episode every week, because if we didn't have any questions,
Yep.
then we didn't do an episode. So
Yep.
that was when we were like, maybe we should think some up so that we've got something so we can try to have some regularity to this thing.
Yeah.
Have you guys, is either you or even Keelan behind the mic there, entered any questions lately?
Entered any? No,
Yeah.
I haven't in years.
I have not entered any in years, although I found out recently my wife sometimes submits some.
My wife, I think I've acknowledged on here, my wife does. And then also I found out a week or two ago, she also has AER'd me directly.
Does she tell you ahead of time?
No, she does not tell me at all.
Oh, so you still don't know what question she's
I
asked?
have not a single clue of one single question she has asked.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so she's asking AER about me or has sent questions, and then she just finds this great joy when I'll come home, especially be like, oh, today's episode was great, and she knows it was one of her questions. She never tells me that, but she just has this great joy of being a listener and a participant in our podcast.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think I've sent any questions in the last year or two, but early on when we started, I was submitting questions every now and then because I was like, oh, yeah, there's something we can talk about. But
Cool.
yeah, I haven't done.
About 6 months, 8 months-ish. But
Yeah.
I make no comments for my husband, who I do know submits questions. I just don't know which one.
Fair. Fair.
Yeah.
All the questions we used to get back in the day that were like, why is Blake so awesome? We'll just assume those were from you.
Those were basically me, yeah.
Need some positive reinforcement, boys. Cool.
Nice. And how about favorite moments? Like, what's 400 episodes? Do you remember like one question or one answer or just fun that we've had?
I can't think of one moment. I can think of, I think of things like, I guess I do think of a few moments. I think of you finally making a stand on an issue, and of all issues, teleportation, and things like that. I think of the many times that I've been like, Kyle, you're a heretic. Genuinely, like if what
let's not say genuinely. I know you're trying to say
no, because of how you're expressing something.
Right.
I understand, and you and I talk a lot outside of the podcast.
Yes.
But that what you just said
yes
was not what you thought you said.
or at
and
least
you've
what
gotten
you
much
heard.
better at it.
Yes, we've cleared a lot of that room. Yes.
Yes. But it used to be like, I feel like you don't realize what you just said.
To defend myself, I don't think I ever crossed the creeds. You just generally held ideas.
I'd have to go back and listen again, but there may be times where you, with it not intentionally, but the way things came out could have been interpreted that way.
Yeah. Which, to point out in that moment, we've got some artwork that you can probably not see super well. So we're going to send a link to it on the show notes of this one. We'll release it other ways, maybe even on our Living Springs Instagram over the next bit. We'll see. We'll find ways to release these. We've got one picture behind me encapsulating exactly that moment where Doug calls me a heretic in a computer cartoon version of us sitting here on the set. Doug is yelling heretic. I am saying, as D. Willie would say, a more recent captured moment, and Blake just thinking, this fence sure is comfy.
That's
And,
right.
and
Perfect.
in a completely moment of meta, the picture contains a picture
Yes.
of the picture.
Yes, which is pretty cool.
Which
I
is
always
pretty
love
awesome.
this.
Like
I like
that's the
pictures
best part. So
within pictures.
if you are an audio only listener, it is worthwhile to click the link in the show notes and look at some of this beautiful artwork.
Totally.
Yeah, it's cool.
And behind Doug, we've got one of the three of us sitting in front of an adventure twisting and turning, as you often capture in the beginning of our episode. Pathway, we're about to set off an adventure, hoping people will join us with smiles on our faces, the Bible at the peak of a mountain behind it. I'm like, let's just discover this way of God and thinking together.
This is great artwork.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
I really like it.
Got another one we'll talk about in a bit, but let's keep reflecting.
Keep reflecting. I was thinking, I think I've shared it on this podcast before, but one moment that I remember well, because the podcast really took a lot of different shapes, but also I think we got really good at it during COVID because we had a lot of time to like do stuff, right?
Yep.
But we also had a lot of questions surrounding COVID and the varying opinions.
Yeah.
And I admit that often I do not read questions ahead, but then sometimes we do get ones where we discuss them, where Kyle, you say, hey, we should look at this one. And there was one that I had a very strong opinion about. Yeah. And we sat down in our old studio, I remember behind that desk, and I was ready. I was like, you're getting it, right?
Like the teleportation.
Yeah, I was going to come out. And and then we started discussing, and somehow maybe I read the question first, and Doug, you jumped on it. And I just remember in your awesome way of just saying like, hey, like we're just going to fight for unity. Like we understand there's unity, there's, there's this on this side and this on this side, but we're just like, we're in a church and we're devoted to have unity. And I was like, man, I was like, you just sucked all the air right out of my argument. Like, I got nothing to say now. And I agreed with you, which was the worst part. I was like, yes, you're right. Fine. So, yeah, I don't know how the audience takes our twists and turns and our advice and our answers sometimes, but I think we even sometimes get at each other. Sometimes where we're like, oh, maybe that is a different way of thinking than I thought about. So,
what about you, Kyle? Any
it's hard to put like a moment on them, but just as you're talking, what I loved introducing, because it wasn't all that long ago, doesn't feel, introducing AER to make this more of a two-way medium, though it's obviously not. Like, this is very much a one-way medium. But getting some feedback and being able to hear in different ways other than just Doug correcting me, but that two-way feedback. Could you give us more clarity on that? That's been really meaningful.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I've been really excited to see that continue to grow. There's been a number of episodes that have been just straight AER that feel like a really cool community. If I could put that word around kind of what this podcast has become over these last even 100 episodes, probably just from 300 to 400, of being able to take that feedback and engage in further conversation. And then two, again, no specific moment, but continuously interacting with people who the podcast has meant something to, and realizing that this has created the space we always intended, or has given people hope to hold on to in their faith, inside and outside of our church, and getting to have those interactions has been just fantastic.
Yeah.
And so really thrilled with it becoming and gaining fruit is really, I know that's maybe too sentimental, but really just, it's been meant a lot to see that this podcast is grounded in both those ways.
For me as well, there's not a specific moment, although I do think of, if I had to pick one moment, it'd be when you were so adamant, Blake, about teleportation. Of all of the things, to be like, I'm going to put my foot down here and you can't argue with me.
Yeah, there's no cost to that one, right? Different than doctrine or theology, where I might be wrong. I knew I was right about teleportation.
But the biggest thing and the most profound thing for me is, like you said, the feedback you get from the people who say, thank you for that answer. Thank you for helping me to see that. Or sometimes, that was my question, and you guys helped me to see, to come to an answer to it. I've talked to many people over the years and said, like, the difference between the podcast and a sermon is me thinking about what you need to hear, which is valid. And as a shepherd, you do have that role. The podcast is you asking me questions from where you are in life. And it's just a very different format for that reason. And to be able to meet people where their faith is intersecting with their real life and raising questions in a real way, and to be able to play a part in helping them navigate those questions is probably the most significant thing for me when I hear that kind of feedback, that people go, thank you, that helped me. I love that, because that's the reason why we do. As much fun as it is just to hear and talk, and sometimes even when the cameras are off, we just continue to yell at each other for a little while. That's always fun, and I like to debate and argue as much as the next guy. Well, that guy more than this guy.
That's the next guy. The next guy.
That's right. That's two guys away. But the real, true, meaningful moments are where you were able to help somebody.
I personally am really thankful for this space as a communicator, and we've already acknowledged here too, for my ability to round out my thoughts more clearly, to gain understanding across. Like, I try to learn and to understand, and then I get excited to share that. And then this space has not only, as we've been talking about, been a benefit to others, but it's been a real benefit to me to be able to learn to communicate. Even there was one when I first talked about Adam and Eve and their ability to have learned good and evil from God.
That is you guys for me.
Totally. That was big. We came back around to it like a few months later, and I was able to talk about it again. And all of a sudden, there wasn't that big gap in our communication and understanding. Like, all of a sudden, there was clarity there. And so that was one, I guess, more specific, meaningful moment for me of like, okay, this is also a space where I'm getting to grow as a communicator, teacher, whatever way you want to phrase it, because of this space, and learning to think through different ways of hearing and understanding and cover ground more clearly as I talk. So really thankful for this space.
But I would also echo to learn from each other. Right? My perspective on things has shifted as we've sat and talked about some of these issues, and I've heard what you guys have to say and gone, okay, that's a valid point that I'd never thought of before, because we do get locked into our own boxes, and we think inside of those boxes, and it's hard to break out of them until somebody explains a different way of thinking that we go, oh, wait a minute, that makes sense. And the other thing is, and this is more so for Kyle than for Blake, is the generation gap, right? Blake and I are close to the same age, and have known each other for a long time. And in some ways, it's funny, because in some ways, you and I are closer related because of age. And in some ways, you and I are closer related because of our Pentecostal upbringing.
Yeah,
And
totally.
sometimes you're the odd one
Yeah.
out because
Yeah.
you've got this different perspective from your
Right.
early church. And sometimes you're the odd one out because you're still a babe.
Yes. Yeah.
I think one of the strangest, disappointing, but also like enlightening things that has happened just in our relationship
Yep.
over the years being on staff is how many times there's been conversations where like, oh man, we should be having this on the podcast. Like, this is good stuff happening right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's literally like right after the recording is over and then we start talking more. It's like, oh, that was really good. But there have been a few times that I remember specifics where we've been having pretty good debate and going, oh, we should save that for the podcast. And then we get on the podcast and the debate is not the same at all because we have listened to each other
Yeah.
and kind of convinced each other, oh yeah, maybe that's not as crazy as what I thought, or maybe I can change my thinking that way, right?
Yeah.
So
Or
there's
sometimes
just
we don't have the
weird moments,
wisdom. Keelan yells at us, guys, stop it, put it on the podcast.
Right. Yes.
This is probably a good time to announce that I'm starting my own podcast called After Inverted Orthodoxy, where I'm going to correct all that they have to say,
Inverted orthodoxy.
which will be available Thursday afternoons. I'm just kidding. That's not a real thing. Don't start looking for that podcast.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah.
So,
Cool.
but
Do you have any more hosty stuff? I got some things after.
Okay.
After though, whenever you're all set.
I was gonna ask because I just thought, what's the strangest thing or the like moment where you've just been like, oh my gosh, is that happening? Did you ever have any of those moments on
There
this
were a
podcast?
lot with tech when we were live. I am
Totally,
so
yes.
thankful not to be live anymore. For those of us that maybe don't realize, probably a year ago, we canceled going live and now release it as a video that's been pre-recorded and goes live at a certain time.
Yeah.
So that is a difference, but there were a lot of tech issues behind the scenes of, oh my
Oh,
gosh,
yeah.
are we doing this? To a more serious degree, there's been definitely moments, especially in repeated AER, where I really feel the strain of the gap of the anonymity of the podcast, which is a really important space to create because people wouldn't ask the questions as they do without that.
Right.
But there have been times where I would love to have closed that gap relationally by like, let's sit down and have a coffee instead of
Yeah,
doing this
totally.
over a podcast.
Totally.
And I can think of a number of times where we've had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 episodes in a row with clearly the same person coming back to their question and our feedback. Well, that I have no problem with the fact that this is how it has
because
to
it's
happen.
just not working, right? They're
Yeah.
not getting the answer that they want, or we're not understanding how they're asking it.
Yeah, and so it's not like maybe it is in part a frustrated, but more genuinely I want to both understand and be understood and close this gap so we don't have this space between whoever you are.
Right.
Just for the sake of we're all on the same journey together trying to figure this out. That has been one that I've really felt like, oh, are we here again? In a both caring and I'm sure frustrating, if I'm being honest, way. I was like, oh, I'd love to close that gap.
yeah.
Yeah.
I will go to a funny memory, a recurring funny thing, which goes back to the early days when we would all just sit around a table.
Yes.
And Melissa and sometimes Laura Lee Laura Lee sometimes would be on the podcast. Melissa would almost always be on the podcast. And we had one mic, but even when we had multiple mics, Melissa would have very beautiful and profound things to say and share such wisdom, and it was just beautiful. Yeah. But the more profound the thing that she was going to say, the quieter she would talk.
Yes.
And also when she really got to like the heart of the nugget of gold of truth, she would close her eyes.
Yeah.
Because as she got quieter, we would like be encouraging her because we didn't have
Hand signals.
we didn't have video at the time.
Right. Yeah.
We'd like get closer to the mic, but she would get quieter and quieter, and then she would close her eyes to just think about how she's going to express things. And every time, I remember numerous times just looking at Kyle and us being like, "Well, I don't know what to do."
We're 8 feet away trying not to take over the audio feed. We can't tap Melissa on the shoulder or anything. We're just, all right, nobody's going to hear this part.
What she's saying is really good. It's too bad no one will ever hear it.
And then imagining the other side where people crank the volume to hear that part, and then you and I
Doug's
come
like,
back on.
hey guys.
Somebody has to jump away.
But I just remember looking at you so many times and being like, sound issues. Yeah.
Totally.
So, good times.
And some funny stuff.
Right on. Well, I'm glad that we are getting better, maybe tech-wise, at doing this, and hopefully we're getting better at communicating these twists and turns of faith as well. And we want to keep doing this. I don't see any reason why we're stopping anytime soon. I enjoy Wednesday mornings. I look forward to this every week.
Yeah.
Well, we did go through one phase where we thought we'd answered all of the questions.
That's true. Yeah.
Right?
We got close.
We were like right there, but turns out we weren't.
No.
Covered everything.
We have not answered all the questions in the world yet.
Yeah.
Right on. So are we moving on to questions now? Or are we actually going to get into...
No, I've got some stuff to cover.
Okay.
All right. So I'm just going to push my mic away for a moment. We have, for the first time, and we're announcing this to you right now, so if you're hearing this on audio, you'll have to go online somewhere. We are, for episode 400, releasing our first Inverted Orthodoxy merch.
Oh, yeah?
So we've got hoodies, crew necks, and t-shirts available, as well as stickers. The prices for all those are listed on the website. I believe there's $60 and $62 for the hoodie and crew necks. 28 or something around there, 30 something for the t-shirts, 31 for the t-shirts. Now we're doing these as a batch order, so you can go on and pre-order them. We are going to, I believe it's September 24th. We're closing orders, so you have to order those ahead of time. We'll then send them to the printer, and they'll all get made in one batch. They'll be available for pickup ideally October 1st here at the church. If you are out of town, please just email us, and we'll start working out a plan for shipping, but those costs are not reflective of including shipping. I know it's a little bit much for a hoodie, but we couldn't guarantee certain numbers and therefore can't get the lowest prices available. Okay. So there may be some flex if we get there, but we can update and refund as needed if we get to a certain threshold of numbers. But those are reflective of our assumed kind of targets for numbers. But I have not shown this, and the missing artwork is as a result of us being able to show you, Blake. This is the surprise you were not in on the loop of. So I'm going to, in this moment, this might be worth coming to the video time, show you the artwork we have on our
While you announce it, I will get up and I will hold one up close to the camera so that people can see it.
Well, we're gonna catch Blake's reaction of this. So Blake, here is the picture we have commemorating the teleportation moment. We have Elijah on a fiery horse traveling away, Jesus with Eugene Peterson sitting at his feet learning, and a Nephilim in the background, all the stained glass effort, all the stained glass motif.
Is a hoodie that I would wear with pride.
So here's your hoodie, Blake.
Nice.
There you go. So Blake, and yours is behind your seat, Doug.
You give me that. I will bring it up to the camera so people can
That
see
is
this glorious
awesome.
design.
This will also be available on, we'll release it on our Instagram. It's on our livingspringsairdrie.com website is where you can pre-order all the stuff. We've also got stickers available in the same design.
Oh, yeah.
Water bottle stickers and our logo sticker of Inverted Orthodoxy available. I believe we had those as $2 each. So you can order those, and again, or you can just come pick those up at the church. We'll have them available for us. But we are going to give away 2 t-shirts. So we've got a medium unisex and a large unisex. So the way you can enter to win those is to go onto our Living Springs Airdrie Instagram or Facebook page, and we're going to release a 400th episode post. You need to follow either one of those accounts, or both is even better, Instagram and Facebook, and then comment your favorite thing about the podcast. It is all we'll require of you. We'll enter all those names, and in a week from now, so let's say the 27th, that's next week.
Don't you think we should give a couple weeks? Some people might be a little behind, given holidays.
Given holidays, they'll see it on social media as well.
All right. Yeah, I was just thinking we should give them 2 weeks to.
All right, we'll do 2 weeks then, based on Doug's advice. So that would put us into early September. So that would be on September 3rd. We will close entries for that. So again, go to Living Springs Airdrie Facebook or Airdrie Living Springs Instagram. Find the Inverted Orthodoxy 400th episode post, and comment on that after you follow the account so we can message you back if you're the winner. But you need to be following us, and then comment your favorite thing about the podcast, and you'll be entered to win one of the t-shirts from there.
I love it. That is super cool, guys. I'm glad that you surprised me with that. That is,
And That's
the
our
third picture that's
Okay,
missing.
picture.
yes.
But there we are. So that one we'll have up for next episode, but I won't try to sneak behind Blake and put it up at the moment.
Sounds good.
There we are.
The new official graphic of Inverted Orthodoxy.
Inverted Orthodoxy. I love it.
Awesome.
That is one thing that was hard, and still to this day, for some reason, I mess up our intro so often. And like Keelan has teased about doing like all the clips of, the mistakes, which would just be me. Just like every time trying to intro this thing, like, thanks for being on our podcast, or thanks for being on the interweb with me.
That's awesome. I should make note, speaking of our website, so I did mention you can order those on livingspringsairdrie.com, which is it was easier for us to create on our church website, but the link is also available for those that are not a part of our church. You can go to invertedorthodoxy.com and you'll see the merch logo and link there, which will drive you to the same spot. You prepay when you make your purchase, and then we'll have all that ready to go for there. So either website you can go to and find the link to order the merch. But did you guys ever watch the internet cartoon Homestar Runner?
I do remember that. Yes.
Homestarrunner.org. It's .com. Like, as you're talking about the egg,
Yes.
that comes to mind.
Totally.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's all right. Generation gap. We were just acknowledging.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I must have just got that one.
Awesome.
Well, that would be because it was youth.
Might
That's I was totally doing youth when that was popular.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well,
Awesome.
first question of the day. Jeez,
How far in are we? I know we started a little early. So, Keelan, what time we got?
27 minutes in.
We got 27 minutes.
All
We
right.
got half an hour.
We're
got a half
long-winded.
hour.
We haven't even got to a question yet.
That's all right. It's a big milestone to celebrate.
Pretty big.
I know, but man, we're long-winded.
What are we going to do for 500? Jeez.
We're taking the whole episode then.
All right.
Yes.
From Hawaii.
Orthodoxy cruise. Oh man,
That's not a bad idea.
that's a terrible idea. Anyways, well, we have 100 episodes, 2 years to decide that.
All right. I'm going to start brainstorming already. All right. So, first question today says, I believe you guys have listened to the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast, but if not, my apologies. If you have, how has listening to the podcast impacted your perspective on being a pastor and the trauma that can come from a church? And how have you seen social media impact the pastoral role, both in terms of increasing popularity and increasing criticism through forums like preachers and sneakers?
Could probably break those up as two. Maybe they even came in as two, but
we
the
can
numbers
do-
didn't hit. But let's.
I believe we all have listened to the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill.
Yeah.
And it is a very captivating but sobering and sad podcast.
Totally.
It is like you can't stop listening to it once you start listening to it, but you also, it's not like you can't stop listening to it because it's so good. It's like, this hurts my soul.
Yeah.
Because you hear the pain of the people's stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the part that you realize, man, what we're doing matters.
Yeah.
And it is people's lives that we are dealing with. I don't know for sure if it's just that podcast, but that's certainly in the mix of that and Eugene Peterson's writings, and just reflections on getting older in this role and entering my third decade of being a pastor. Over the last number of years, just realizing how sacred a responsibility it is, and how carefully you have to treat it. It is a great honor to have someone say, can you help shepherd me in my faith? And you need to grow in the realization of what that is. And when I was younger, I don't know that I had the humility around it that I do now. I see, the older I get, the more I see the incredible honor and sacred calling that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Really just that alongside with Doug, the sobering realization and reminder of what that podcast showed. I'm thankful. That was just the shadow side to the positive reinforcement that I had been learning through. I think the year that came out, I was on a big Eugene Peterson kick again. And like his call to what it means to truly be a pastor then was amplified with this. And if you don't, of the story of
Yes.
that. I felt a lot of conviction. There's been times where I've gone to go back and listen to it, and I've not done so intentionally. Like there's a part of me that loves to cheer on the like critique of church, especially North Americanized versions of it, and I've been really hesitant to feed that desire in me to critique others, because I think one of the biggest things that I heard so often in that episode was I could see, though I would hope it'd be a long road, the trajectory of the same things that are in me that were in Mark and in that culture that I could take to those ends over time without accountability. And so it was a real stark warning of that same brokenness is in me and I don't want to feed it. And so even just the ability to go back and critique and think I'm better than that by hearing it again is something I've avoided. I had a lot of empathy for him. Like, he was a young guy who was thrown into massive fame and success, which we see that in the business world of course, that person has taken it to that degree. And of course, they're running a podcast now on how to become a business person, even though it's like, that just happened to work out that way.
Yeah.
But it was the fruit of a lot of other things that were going on in the church culture at that time that also put him into that. I'll leave it there on that.
I appreciate that. I just, before you speak, I think when we listen to a podcast like that, if we're listening to it and we're not grieving, but we've shifted and we're in like the morbid curiosity stage, then we need to maybe take a pause from that.
Yeah, it was an interesting podcast in so many ways to me. I guess first of all, I'd been to Mars Hill twice. I'd been down to listen to Mark Driscoll preach, and I'd been down to a conference that he did about not church division. That's not what they call it. Church multiplication series is what they call it. But yes, and I'd read a few of his books. Like I did appreciate him for a time, and I think a lot of pastors did.
I owed a lot to him.
Yeah, totally. And I still think there's lots of great stuff that he said that I learned or whatever. But then the sobering part of the podcast was listening to it and going, oh my gosh, like I have thought that way. I've probably said those phrases. I have even believed my own stuff. And definitely as a youth pastor, before I came on staff here, I think I could have easily been Mark Driscoll, had enough fame and all the rest come my way. Not to say that I would have been like him, but just in my own way, I could have sabotaged my own faith and stuff, and I probably could have wrecked people in a church pretty easily. So it was just interesting to hear that and go, yeah, there needs to be, as you're saying, Doug, like these checks and balances. There needs to be these places where we realize what we are actually called to do as pastors. But then looking at it too, just from not only a pastoral role, but thinking of like a congregation role, I think one of my favorite episodes and all that, or the one that I remember just the most, is the one where it says, we need a king. And just talking about the past that we as people will give leaders just because we want to be led. Right? We want to identify with whatever is the coolest thing going on. So we give a pass. And I have thought about that episode so many times in the last few years since that podcast was aired, in just different life things that I've seen, whether it be church or outside of church, where I go, whoa, that's the moment where we're giving a pass to a leader because we want to be, on the cool team, right? So it was a very educational podcast to me in some ways as well.
And Mike Cosper did an awesome job with that. I'll give credit where credit's due.
Absolutely.
Of balancing that. Like, it never felt like it was fully just focused on critiquing, which some things have been. So he did a beautiful job. I'm speaking about the part of my own heart that leans into that side of things that I recognize.
Absolutely.
He did a really good job. I don't know, again, just in giving credit, because he did such a great job. His newest one, Devil in the Deep Blue Sea, Mike Cosper went back and has done another kind of dive into the satanic panic of the 70s and 80s, 90s as well.
That'd be interesting.
Before your time, Kyle.
Though I very much steeped in the later part of it. Like a lot of things that he talked about, I'm very aware of.
The fallout of that, you would be very much part
Yeah,
of
it was
it.
definitely in the ethos of what it built.
Yeah.
For sure.
I've heard about that one, and I'm very, very intrigued by it because that was my youth years.
Yeah, you should definitely check it out.
So-
Cosper has done another
I need to
really
listen
good
to
job journalistically of bringing some stuff forward, and yeah, really good job.
I remember going to youth convention
Yeah.
when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
YC in Alberta became huge in the 90s and 2000s, but it existed in Ontario in the 80s when I was in youth, but it was much smaller.
Yeah.
It was in Cambridge or Waterloo, and they had they took over the university once the school was out.
Okay, yeah.
And there's probably 2,000 or 3,000 kids that would come from Southern Ontario.
Yeah.
And then they had like all these breakout sessions.
Yeah.
And I remember one was on Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons. I never knew anything about it. I wasn't even intrigued by it.
Yeah.
But I remember saying to my friend, like, let's go to that one. That sounds like it's going to be interesting. And the guy got up and just talked about all of the demonic stuff in this and all of the, if you play this, basically you're like 20 minutes from being demon possessed.
Yeah.
And that session ended,
Yeah.
and I looked at my friend and was like, let's do this one again because that was awesome. Probably not what they were going for, but just as a teen,
Yeah.
there was this, I certainly don't want any part of it,
Yeah.
but it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
Just out of generosity, I do also want to say, and again, we could talk a long time, but I don't want to lean into that carnal side of me of critique. I'm very thankful for the lessons I learned from that. But like, I do want to give appreciation to Mark and he pointed me to a lot of study. Like I will have regularly said, I was in a season of life where I was so frustrated with the charismatic end that people like Mark, he pointed me towards the whole more reformed, a new reformed side of things.
You're
to
talking
take
about Mark
study.
Driscoll.
Yeah, Driscoll, yeah.
Okay.
Of like wanting to learn and to study, and his claim of reading a book a day, obviously not valid, but like that desire to study. Like I learned a lot of that moment. His desire to call people out bluntly is
I think he
sometimes
did.
really needed. Like,
I think he did some really good things
Yeah.
for.
but the caution
Christianity.
and discernment of like when to use those tools is, I think, what kind of really lacked. And so again, there's part of good, and there always is. It's so easy to just toss babies out with bathwater.
Well, and the other thing is, while that podcast exclusively focused on Mars Hill,
Yeah.
it's called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill.
Yeah.
The reality is the megachurch structure
Yep.
has allowed for lots of scandal.
Yeah, you
And
can do
this is-
hundreds of different versions of that podcast
yes.
with the next Magic Church down the road.
Well, I think about, as a staff,
Yeah.
earlier this year, we read through a church called Tove,
Yeah.
Scott McKnight, which he wrote in response to the Willow Creek scandal and the Harvest Church scandal.
Yep.
There were two megachurches in the Chicago area.
Yep.
Now, for what I think, because of the spectacularly quick fall of Mars Hill as a church,
Which is, yeah,
most
crazy.
churches, when the pastor falls or when a scandal is brought to light, the church is reduced but continues.
Yeah.
The fact that Mars Hill as a church ceased to exist
Yeah.
so quickly
Yeah.
after everything fell apart with Mark Driscoll
Yeah.
really made it that much more sensational.
Yeah.
But it is not the only story.
Yeah.
And one would be too many.
Yeah.
And there are way too many.
Yeah.
And I think the stories we hear about the mega churches, but I, not throwing either of you under the bus. I can't remember what phrase was just said. Like, that happens in mega churches, but it happens in any church. Like that
Yeah.
is this idea of, someone not being accountable or not having anybody, making sure that they're accountable,
Yeah.
taking power and authority and abusing it in some way,
Yeah.
and can really hurt like a little local church
Yes.
just as badly, but it just doesn't make the news, right?
But yeah, I would
Yeah.
argue it's, I think we've had conversations like this. That's actually just the megachurch mentality that just hasn't been successful in becoming it yet.
Right, yeah,
I
totally.
regularly
That
joked,
would be it,
if
yeah.
you infuse any given church $10 million of cash overnight, a lot of them would just do the exact same stuff and become that.
Yeah.
And they just are not yet successful megachurches in their mentality, right? And so you can be the central figure of 40 people and still have those same attitudes and ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Or you can be the pastor of a church of thousands and have that gentle and character focused idea. And so it's really a thread of character and ideals more than it is numbers, if I can put it that way. And so
Yeah.
you can, as you're saying, you can become that central figure in power with a small group of people in the same sins. Just, yes, it doesn't make the news.
Yes.
Yeah.
The money just empowers and gives you opportunity.
Yeah, the money and size. Yeah.
to to let what is inside
Yep.
flourish more fully.
And we all like seeing giants fall. Like that's whatever reason we love seeing the successful fall in our culture, period. Well, and that is the same within Christian circles, right? So we celebrate those, and I mean that word. We will often celebrate those, even if it's a wrong. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. The second part of that question then is, how have you seen social media impact the pastoral role, both in terms of increasing popularity and increasing criticism through forums like preachers and sneakers?
So before we answer that, because I think this is a valid question, I want to just start by saying one of the problems I think is that we need to separate out preacher from pastor. They are not the same thing. And we make them one and the same,
Yep.
and they're not. Because someone is a good preacher doesn't even mean they have a pastoral gift.
Yeah, that's true.
And maybe they have a pastoral gift, but they've never developed it.
Yep.
And they're living that, self-centered, I want to be the man or woman focus that would completely allow them in a right setting to turn into a dysfunctional leader. Pastor and preacher are not the same thing. And in the 21st century North American church, we have to understand this. I was having a conversation recently with someone who doesn't attend our church, and they were talking about, they said, have you heard of this person? And it was a person who has a preacher who has a TV ministry, and probably an internet ministry. But I don't know a lot about them. But they said they're a great pastor. And I said, well, you don't have any clue whether they're a great pastor.
Yeah,
or not,
you'd have no context for that.
Because they're in California, and you've never even been to their church, much less meet them.
Yeah.
They may be a great preacher, but those are not the same thing. And as I said that, you could see this person. It was like I was speaking Spanish, because they were like, I don't understand what you're talking about. But pastor and preacher are not the same thing.
Yeah. We have conflated. I should have put conflated. I don't know.
You should have put conflated on that picture for sure.
Dang it, send the sweaters back.
The term pastor when we out of the fivefold ministry gifts and to one. And we're like, here's the one catch-all term we're going to use.
Yes.
I very much recognize one of my greatest weaknesses is pastoring. In the truest sense, I find myself skilled and passionate more about the teaching and the preaching side of things. And then Blake, you would thrive in the pastoral when I look to you all the time on like, I don't know how you do it, and care for people so genuinely. So even just that distinction is really important to hear. And I think because of that, language does impact expectations. We now expect within a congregation every preacher to pastor and every pastor to preach. And then we have this weird disconnection when you don't do all of them the same way. And I really have appreciated this church. I know in the past, even you've had staff members who you've just given the permission to like, you don't have to preach because you don't want to, because you're awesome at all these other things. And this is where we need you in our community, which I really appreciate.
Yeah. And I think along the lines of what you're saying, when you think about churches that, this is our executive pastor, our administrative pastor, you get into a large enough church, this is our human resources pastor.
Totally.
Why do we feel the need to put pastor on the end of every title that anyone has in leadership in the church? We should be able to go, that's our human resources person.
Yep.
And that's okay. Or that's our director, executive director of our church.
Yep.
But we are too quick sometimes to lump that word in. And what that word means is full-time in a ministry position in a church.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily mean they are a pastor or a shepherd to people.
Yeah.
So having said all of that, I have been fascinated by preachers in sneakers. And I think multiple thoughts when I look at it on Instagram. I think, how in the world do they afford these clothes?
Yep.
And
Is it still a thing?
I unfollowed it because I just couldn't anymore. A long
I
time
don't
ago.
follow it. I try really hard to not go on Instagram at all.
Yeah.
I try to stay off social media at all.
not
I've
sure.
been on that for the last little while, but so I can't say. But when I have looked at it, it's been like,
Yeah. It's not like you're wearing that every week either.
well, if you bought the $1,000 pair of shoes and that was the
more.
only pair of shoes you wore for 10 years, I think that's excessive. but maybe not because
That's a little more acceptable, maybe.
well,
than,
maybe not. Depends like the quality of the shoe, right? Like, I mean, I like to run, and I'll spend $200 on a pair of running shoes, and they don't last that long. So,
Right.
like, footwear doesn't necessarily last a long time.
Yep.
But when it's a different suit jacket every week, that's when it's like, how are you doing this? Is someone giving you these clothes to promote their brand?
Yep.
Because it seems crazy
Yeah.
that you'd be able to afford that.
Yeah. I have made the contrast. We used to expect, and it still do in some Christian circles, your pastor to wear a nice suit to present themselves in their best dress towards God. And we've critiqued that idea in the circles that have moved away from it. And then we just shifted from assume it's a suit to the best, nice, cool, relevant clothing we can wear.
Yeah.
And we've just exchanged one cool for another.
Yeah.
That has been part of my protest. And I try not to talk about this often of I wear the same t-shirt and jeans every day. Because there was a time when I was starting to really enjoy clothing and like style. And I'm like, I just can't go there. This is just a different beast of the exact same thing for me. And so we've made that shift. But I will say this. I loved when Preacher Sneakers came out. And I really appreciate it because it is fulfilling, as we talk about the fivefold ministry, it was fulfilling the office of a prophet, I really believe, in a lot of ways. Calling critique to the church of what we have allowed in. And so social media, to jump really into the question is a wider part, not just that account. Social media at its best is doing that really well. And documentaries and media of all kinds that are coming and calling the church out on its stuff is exactly what the prophetic office is supposed to do. Prophetic is not, as far as I have come to understand it, at its best and at its truest from a biblical standpoint, future telling for individuals that's way out there. It's rooted and grounded in the moment of what we are doing as God's people or who claim to be God's people and where that will likely end as a result of our actions and the destruction we will reap as our own actions continue on. That's what it does in the Old Testament. That's what I believe it does in the New. When Jesus prophesies around the destruction of Jerusalem, he was just calling the writing on the wall. It didn't take a supernatural gifting to see where that was going to lead. Though I believe he had it. And so what Preacher Sneakers and other accounts and other critiques of the church do on social media at their best is call it out. What I've been really frustrated with is now we just go, this is entertaining. Like the fact that Preacher Sneakers, if it's still going on, is just a thing and we've all accepted it. We have just shown how
the
foolish we are.
prophetic just
Now I'm
proved
just
his point.
entertained by this modem of critique. And so we go, it's okay now to celebrate those things. It really saddens me in a lot of ways. It has, unfortunately, elevated the majority of large churches, social media as a whole, and these critiques that have gone. And so largely its effect on the pastoral role, I believe, has increased skepticism in the local church and the local communities that are even outside the church. Everybody assumes your local pastor needs to be looked at through the lens of the megachurch pastor that's been on social media or on the news, which I can understand, but I just really wish it weren't so. Because I know the stats, and I don't know that they are in Canada. We get absorbed so many more American stats. The average church in the States is like 65 people. That is not your megachurch pastor wearing fancy clothes and doing all that stuff. There's somebody who's just trying to care for the people in their local community and trying to do that to the best of their abilities. They're a flawed human being, no doubt. But now all of a sudden you get critiqued. The pastor used to be one of the most respected offices within a community around culture, period. Now it is super far low on that list.
Yeah, that's so true.
And I believe rightfully so. Because of some of the things we've done in large and small scale, I get it. But now it's almost like we're starting from a negative foothold versus even just neutral. And so our ability to speak to people around the fullness that Jesus is offering and what he has for us and to offer that, we have to make up ground before we can even start that. There have been times where I can remember one starkly, sitting getting my hair cut and the person asked, "What do you do?" And I had this moment of wrestling. I knew just how my conversation had gone already. If I say I'm a pastor, it's just going to be radio silence the rest of the talk. So I actually I gave myself permission in a moment to stretch the truth a little. I said, I'm actually a spiritual advisor. And conversation just all of a sudden jumped off the page.
No
and
way.
then a couple minutes later, I was able to clarify, I work at a church here in town. And all of a sudden, we were speaking some of the same language
Yeah.
on what it means to live as a spiritual human. And I believe that that's most grounded in Jesus. But all of a sudden, it closed that gap of like, you're a pastor, and I'm going to fill in the blank what that means.
Yes.
And so I believe social media has rightly done its job as critique. And now, because the church has failed to listen, we're continuing to increase that gap and the deficit of space we have to clear as a pastor to be able to earn people's trust, especially outside the church.
I never like telling people what I do until they get a chance to know me.
Correct.
That's the best case scenario, because it has happened where I've had the opportunity to get far enough into relationship that when they ask me what I do, I say I'm a pastor, and they're like, I never would have thought that.
Totally.
Which I take as a compliment. Yes, when you ask too early, it's like, oh, please don't hold this against me.
Yeah.
With what you're saying about the prophetic,
Yep.
I was reading a book recently, and I can't remember which one. While you were talking about it, I was like, what book was that? But I can't remember. But it was talking about the prophetic, and it was talking about how one of the things we forget or we miss about the prophetic, and that's essential in the prophetic, is that it is we. It is not you.
Yep.
It is we. And yes, there are elements in like the book of Isaiah and some of the other Old Testament prophetic books where they look at the foreign nations and they talk about the foreign nations. But there's almost always then a return to Israel and who are we. And there's one of the minor prophets, and I can't think of who it is off the top of my head, that begins with all of these prophecies about the other nations. And if you look at it geographically in the region of that time, it starts out and gets closer and closer and closer and closer until it gets to Israel.
Right.
And like if you understand what's really going on, it's like, yeah, those people way out there, and those people out there, and those people next door, and wait a minute.
Us. Oh, man.
The challenge with something like Preachers and Sneakers is we can be entertained by it because we don't see us in it.
Yep.
Because, and I don't just mean that in pastors, I mean that is in the church.
Totally.
Because that is not just exposing pastors, although I think that's the focus, is look at what these pastors are wearing, but it does speak to church structures that are problematic.
Yep.
What we should be willing to do is look at something like that and then be able to recognize the propheticness of it.
Yeah.
But then speak to God and say, God, how does that relate to me?
Yeah.
Where in my context am I doing following the same principle, but maybe in a different way? Maybe I can't do it as much, but we should always, when we recognize something as that prophetic, provocative, calling out thing, first of all, say, where do I fit in this? Before we switch it up.
Yeah.
I think of Obadiah, which was exclusively to another nation. I think of Jonah, which was exclusively to another nation. But those are the only two I can think of.
But even Jonah, I would even just push back on you there. It's written and its focus as a story is about another nation.
Absolutely.
While intricately it's supposed to be critiquing the prophet and this Jonah, but Israel's attitude towards others.
Oh, and I was going to say that. The purpose of Jonah is actually to expose what's wrong with your heart.
Correct.
Because we are all Jonah.
Correct.
And we want to see those people, whoever they are, get what they deserve while we're sitting in no better of a state.
Yeah.
But it is focused outwardly.
Totally.
With a beautiful, like it's focused, the story is written in such a way that it draws you in and hooks you and then slaps you in the face and you go, it's always been about you.
Yeah.
But it is at surface level focused out. But when you look at the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible prophetic books, and you weigh out how much of it is focused out versus how much it is focused in, you can't argue that the primary focus of the prophetic is us, not them.
Totally. I was actually just reading, just finished Jesus and the Victory of God, N.T. Wright, and he spent a lot of time about Jesus' role as a prophet, how he critiqued from within for within Israel. And that was a lot of his spot. And so really well done. And again, I wish, like Preachers and Sneakers, I've heard some interviews with the guy who started that account. He deeply cares about the church. That was his intent, right? And then, yes, we won't listen. And then our ears just get numb to the ideas.
Well, it's easy to say that's not me.
Yep.
It's so easy to say that not me.
Yep.
Even when it is.
Yep.
Right? Like we read the the Gospels and Jesus speaking to the Pharisees. And Jesus wants in the Gospels the Pharisees to follow him. They're so close, but they're missing it by that much. But that much they're missing it by is everything, right? And Jesus speaks to them and they don't get it. Jesus speaks to the disciples and they don't get it. And we're constantly like, oh man, those guys. Yeah. We don't realize that's us.
Yeah.
And
we're those guys.
Yeah, the writers of the Gospels wrote those stories that way so the audience would see themselves not as Jesus, but in all of these other roles and what Jesus is speaking into your life today and how he's trying to help you to see something better and how you are completely missing it.
Yeah.
So true. We are probably at the end, you guys. We've used up our time. Thank you for joining us on episode 400 of Inverted Orthodoxy podcast. We love it much, and we're going to keep doing it. And we hope that you guys enjoy the journey as well. Definitely, I think you're looking at me because you want me to say, check out our website.
Order your merch. You got to September 24th.
And order some merch. So we would like
Speaking of merch, can I just ask one question as we wrap up? You've had the hoodie that we gave you sitting like that. Was that because you wanted to demonstrate and show people that logo, or was it because you're cold?
No, I'm not cold.
Or because you're from Saskatchewan. It's called a bunny hug.
Yes, but we all know Blake is a fair weather person.
Okay, I will admit that I was readily sitting here looking at myself in the camera at one point. I was like, I could get a blanket with that.
That's awesome.
I was questioning that more than once when I was looking over you. I was like, he's just cold because you're always cold.
So good. Thanks very much. Join us again next week. We will see you guys.